Hello class and welcome to this Mega Man 6 walkthrough right here on Video Games 101 by way of Let's Play with Brigands. I'm your instructor, Professor Brigands, and Mega Man 6 is notable for being the final entry for the Blue Bomber on the NES. Released in late 1993, late in the NES's lifespan, and just a month before the spin-off series Mega Man X made its glorious debut on the Super Famicom before coming to the States a few months later, original Mega Man had lost a lot of his luster by the time Mega Man 6 rolled around. No pun intended on rolled there, but I still say it was cruel for the photographer to use this photo of Mega Man for the box art seconds after getting the news from his agent that Capcom decided to go with an unknown for the lead in their new high-profile 16-bit series. Talk about PO'd, as I guess the Capcom offices are just up and to the left there. And,
can I make fun of the box art too?
Our resident fact finder, Fluff, everyone. You got anything?
I didn't know Capcom hired Rankin and Bass to do the cover art on a Mega Man game.
Yeah?
Because it kind of looks like claymation.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Yeah, it's actually probably one of the better covers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how about the Japanese cover?
Pretty formulaic, but solid.
Better than that super creepy, smooth old man baby face he was rocking in a lot of the North American ones, though.
I don't know why it looks like someone did a bad job photoshopping out all the Robot Master's lower halves, though.
Yeah, it kind of looks like Mega Man's head is acting as the midriff for Tomahawk Man.
Plant Man definitely sees it.
Well, as you're here, Fluff, I know the game laid the groundwork in the intro, but how about a little context here for Mega Man 6?
Well, we've had our fun poking at the plots of Mega Man games in the past, particularly in the back half of the NES hexology, as Capcom, I guess, decided they couldn't just roll out Dr. Wily every single time, at least not without a generous amount of bait and switching, where they introduce a mysterious new character who initially seems to be like a good guy, only to turn out to try to take over the world and usually just act as a cover for the real bad guy in Dr. Wily. Dr. Cossack, anyone? Well, this time the character is Mr. X. Not to be confused with the thousands of other evil Mr. X's we've encountered on this channel, but hey, maybe this one won't be evil. Literally introduced as the mysterious Mr. X in the manual, this Mr. X is an eccentric-sounding billionaire who sponsors the first annual robot tournament, a competition which invites the brightest robot designers from around the globe to enter their creations into a series of battle tests to determine the most powerful robot in the world. Shocker, when everyone shows up with their powerful robots, Mr. X declares that he's stealing the robots to help him take over the world. So much for the not being evil angle. I'm calling it right now. If this mysterious Mr. X doesn't turn out to either be connected to Dr. Wily or actually be Dr. Wily in disguise by the end of this game, I'll dedicate an entire class to my favorite facts about Mario. And not even in a sarcastic axe to grind kind of way. Genuinely nice stuff.
Raising the stakes. I like it. Alright, thanks, Fluff. We'll check in with him a bit later, but in terms of difficulty, Mega Man 6 is very much like the rest of the series. I might be swayed to say it's even a bit easier on balance than most of the series, but I'll stick with the same difficulty rating I gave most of the series and give Mega Man 6 a 5 out of 10. I mean, they never change, so why should I, right? In terms of difficulty, this equates to throwing your controller during one of the very small handful of decently challenging parts, but we'll talk about it. As usual, Blaze has your items and weapons guides. Gary's got your best weapons and tips for taking down every boss. Fluff's going to share some interesting facts about this game, and as always, in addition to walking you through the game, I'll share the best Mega Man 6 boss order on the other side of the intro. So let's run it and get into this Mega Man 6 walkthrough right here on Video Games 101. Alright, let's begin a new game. As reliable as Dr. Wily being behind the schemes in some way or another in all these games is our Mega Man 6 best boss order. We're going by weaknesses here, beginning with Flame Man, then on to Blizzard Man, then Plant Man, Tomahawk Man 4th, Yamato Man 5th, Night Man 6th, Centaur Man 7th, and finally ending with Wind Man. We begin with Flame Man not because he's necessarily the easiest to defeat, with just our stock Mega Buster, but because we gain an important upgrade in the Rush Power Adaptor for defeating him. Then 2 stages later, we get another important upgrade in the Rush Jet Adaptor from Plant Man. I always make the observation that it'd be great if Mega Man could hold on to some of these upgrades between games, but yeah, I believe amongst other theories in our somewhat recent class on Mega Man X3, I questioned if X had some kind of gambling addiction that forced him to hawk all of his upgrades between games, but it's making things harder on us. Come on, Mega Man. But I digress. That's the Mega Man 6 best boss order, and don't worry, regardless of weapon, Gary has tips on taking down every boss in this game. But let's take a look now at the controls for Mega Man 6. Very much the same as every other entry in this series, at least starting with Mega Man 3 and 4, I suppose, in the sense that you can slide by holding down and tapping A. Plus you can hold B to power up that Mega Buster, charge it up so that when you release it, it does 3 times the damage of a single normal shot. Blaze is going to talk more about the damage of each weapon in this game as we acquire them from the Robot Masters, but let's take a look now at the Bricks notes for this Mega Man 6 walkthrough, the keys to beating this game. First, already talked about it, but know the best boss order as well as the boss weaknesses. Gary will talk about those as we get to each boss. I want to mention if you take out these fire tellies with a charged shot before they drop their flames into the oil pit, then you can avoid that oil pit turning into an instant death should you touch those flames once it becomes engulfed. Just something to keep in mind. Secondly, ABC, always be charged, certainly before we get any more weapons from, or any subsequent weapons from the Robot Masters. Just a good rule of thumb here in this first stage in particular. There's a couple sneaky, dangerous jumps on this stage, so make sure you're at the edge of your platforms before you make your jumps. You'd think sloshing around in oil like we just did would cause problems for Mega Man, especially when we're about to take on a boss named Flame Man at the end of the stage, but not the case. Got our first E-Tank here. We'll bring in Blaze to talk about the items of Mega Man 6 momentarily. But finally, use the best acquired weapons in place of your Mega Buster. We won't have to slum it with the Mega Buster for too long, honestly, and Blaze will talk about that. That was a gimme right there, still using our temporary invincibility, but coming up on the first boss here in Mega Man 6, so let's go to our resident boss expert, Gary.
It's Scary Gary's Boss Beaters.
Distance is key with our first boss here in Mega Man 6 and Flame Man, as this gives us more time to react to each of his 2 attacks. His first and more dangerous Flame Blast attack sends out vertical lines of flame balls, which are randomly spaced out. At a distance, I like doing a measured jump forward toward Flame Man as this attack draws near, as typically you'll find a wide enough gap to land in safely without taking damage. Sometimes you need to push it a bit farther ahead, sometimes not as much, so react accordingly to find that sweet spot. Your Mega Buster won't go through these flames, so prioritize avoiding damage when this attack is used. Much easier to deal with is Flame Man's other attack, in which he'll fire out a set of 3 spaced out slow-moving fireballs at you. Your shots can go through these, so charge up that Mega Buster and get your shots off as you jump between these projectiles. Otherwise, Flame Man just does a variety of differently spaced jumps toward you, so make sure to slide underneath him when he does a longer jump to one side to ensure you don't get trapped between him and the wall, as you'll have virtually no room to avoid his much tighter flame wall in that case. Time your charge shots to hit him when he lands as well, when you get an opportunity. For what it's worth, the Windstorm attack from Windman can defeat him in 7 hits, so keep that in mind for the boss rush.
Thank you very much, Gary, and just got our first weapon there in the Flame Blast. Blaze?
It's Blaze's best here in Item Sky. The Flame Blast is a powerful weapon whose damage is 1 damage greater than the power of a charged Buster shot, so basically 4 damage versus 3. Arcing down in front of you, the shots don't go very far, but upon contact with the ground or any other surface, even walls, it will create a tall, narrow, short-lasting flame wall. This can be used to destroy certain barriers, but more importantly, if your thumb is already tired from constantly holding down that B button, swap out this weapon for a single-shot takedown of a lot of enemies in this game. Every shot only takes 1 meter of weapon energy, so keep an eye on that bar and save some for Blizzard Man. But between the efficiency and damage, I'm going to give the Flame Blast my award for Weapon of the Game. here in Mega Man 6. Use it well.
There you go. Love getting the weapon of the game early on. And hug this first wall as you drop down here and then equip your new power adapter, which we just picked up. You can use it right there. Grab yourself a 1-up. They make a song and dance out of it every time you equip it, but you can click through it to save a little bit of time / your sanity. But yeah, we just saw what it did, but still. Blaze, how about that power adapter?
The Rush Power Adapter is basically a melee attack for Mega Man, and it can be charged just like the Mega Buster, only it has a bar to show when it's fully charged. While it's not the most practical weapon due to the close proximity it forces you into to use it, fully charged punches allow Mega Man to break through obstacles you'll find throughout the remainder of this game. Sometimes to get E-Tanks and other items, or even find the actual boss in a stage to get yourself a part of feat, which myself and the professor will talk about later, but it's worth mentioning this is the sole weapon capable of destroying the cyber gabiole Roomba looking things that patrol the ground and can make some platforms difficult to navigate. Also important to note that you cannot slide or charge the Mega Buster while using this.
Thank you, Blaze. You can also use it charged up to take out those shield enemies on their front side, which is kind of nice. Take out these blocks as well, if you like. Make getting around a little bit easier. Mind the spikes with how low this submarine goes here. And if you break through here, you can help yourself to some loot on the right side. This includes an E-Tank. And speaking of E-Tanks and loot, let's bring in Blaze for our obligatory overview on the basic items here in Mega Man 6. Blaze?
Alright, one last time here on the NES, let's talk the basic items you could pick up here in Mega Man 6. We have the energy pellets and the weapon capsules to restore meters to your health and your currently selected weapon respectively. These come in the smaller and larger varieties for restoring 2 and 10 meters respectively. Next we have the energy tanks, or E-Tanks as I like to call them. These will top off your health on demand from your inventory. And lastly, the Mega Man helmet is your 1-up here in Mega Man 6.
Thank you, Blaze, as always. Note that you can press into these to start the timer, and you need to take out both of these explosives on the right. Cannot make that slide. I've tried it. Doesn't end well. But now with tips on taking down Blizzard Man, let's go back to him, Gary.
Boss beater.
Blizzard Man is pretty straightforward. Its main attack, the Blizzard attack, generates 4 snowflakes which will appear above you and slowly move towards you. If you jump when they appear, you can bait them to aim for where you're not standing. Regardless, they move so slowly they're very easy to avoid. After 2 or 3 rounds of these, they'll switch to a rolling animation for a second before coming at you fast. If you're far enough away, then you'll have enough time to react, jumping over him as he charges like King Slime from DuckTales. Note that he's invulnerable while rolling, and will probably do this a couple times before reverting back to his Blizzard attack. That's your time to use the Flame Blast when you're not dodging those slow-moving projectiles. Get 7 shots in on him and take him down.
Thank you, Gary. And how about that Blizzard attack, Blaze?
The Blizzard attack is an effective, if not expensive, spread of snowflakes, which each deal 2 damage. For reference, your uncharged shots deal 1 damage, and your charged Mega Buster shots once again deal 3, so this is right there in the middle. The spread on these snowflakes are sure to at least hit most enemies in front of you, and it'll clear out a lot of the weaker ones, ensuring you don't need to be too accurate to clear a path. The downside is the cost of 3 meters for each use, giving you only 10 shots with a full bar, so maybe save this for the next boss and stick to other weapons like the aforementioned Flame Blast to replace your Mega Buster.
Good call, Blaze. Thank you. Yeah, one of the more expensive weapons. We got Plant Man Stage here, looking like Woodman, kind of, in a lot of ways, certainly with that beginning there. And the weapon itself, too, to spoil it slightly, is very reminiscent of Woodman's Leaf Shield, but we'll talk about that once we get it. Let's see what Eddie gives us, usually something we don't need. Well, I guess in that case it worked out. Thanks, Eddie. I mean, we know that you have E-Tanks somewhere in there. That's a possibility. How about you just always give us an E-Tank? Sorta, kinda, maybe a mini boss right there, but just a few shots from that flame blast. Very powerful, as Blaze mentioned. These guys kind of remind me of the baddies out of Man Stage back in Mega Man 4. Just gotta figure by the 6th chapter on the NES. By the way, don't hold down the A button when you're on those springs, especially underneath those spikes right there. That'll result in a bad time, but yeah, there's just a lot of familiar looking things at this point in the series. Hard to stay fresh when you're 6 chapters in on the same console, no less, but speaking of 6, yeah, I think it is 6 shots from the flame blast, right to the head there. Very effective, and we don't have to be nearly as precious with our shots now that the Robot Master's weakness on this stage will not be flame blast. These fish hopping out kind of remind me of something from, we gotta shoot these hands to open them up and stand on them. Something out of Mega Man 2 right there, one of the Wily stages late in the game. And note that these are power-ups there, or health replenishing. Looks like it's just part of the environment there, but I don't know if it's naturally occurring. It's growing on these flowers, or as part of those flowers, but it's nice not having to time up. Hitting A at just the right time when it comes to these springs. Just hold it down, and they give it to you. Even the music of this stage sounds very reminiscent of one of the other titles. It's pretty derivative at this point. No disrespect to anyone whose maybe favorite soundtrack is this Mega Man out of the bunch, but switching to that Blizzard attack, let's go back to Gary.
Boss beater.
Plant Man is all about reacting to what he does. And I know you might be thinking, Gary, isn't that the strategy for most bosses? And you'd be right, but it's especially important for Plant Man. Basically, at the start of this battle, he'll fire his plant barrier at you, which is kind of like Woodman's leaf shield, only slower and lower, making it easy to jump over. Plant Man will then charge at you and reform his barrier, possibly jumping away from, at, or over you, and firing the barrier and repeating the process. Just jump over that plant barrier, get a shot in before or as he's charging at you, and react accordingly to his jump. As Blaze mentioned, you only get 10 shots with a fully topped off Blizzard attack, so make every shot count and take him down.
Thank you, Gary, and for our efforts, we'll be handsomely rewarded here in the form of both the plant barrier and the rush jet adapter. First things first, how about that plant barrier, Blaze?
Gary just mentioned Woodman's leaf shield. Kinda just feels like someone at Capcom grabbed a thesaurus and looked up leaf shield and naming plant barrier, but anyway, plant barrier surrounds Mega Man with a powerful barrier of plants. Yeah, protecting him from the next shot he takes, at which point it will disappear. Unlike the leaf shield, you can't launch it at anyone. Plus it costs 1 more meter at 4 meters of weapon energy per use, giving you only 7 uses with a full bar, making it the most expensive weapon we've gotten yet. But at least it stays on Mega Man as he moves around the screen, at least until it hits something or someone hits it. For dishing damage, it equals the power of the Flame Blast at 4 damage, but given the cost and range, it's not really a practical weapon.
Fair enough, thank you very much, Blaze. It's like something we put a quarter in to get a Met toy right there. Little dispenser, but keeping that flame attack out. How about that Rush Jet Adaptor? Blaze?
Alright, the Rush Jet Adapter allows you to do a weird merging with Rush the Dog, just like the other adapter, but more importantly, it allows you to fly around for brief periods by holding down the A button when equipped. The Rush Jet Adapter recharges itself when you're on the ground, I guess making it better for the environment than if it ran on weapon energy refills, but you'll say screw the environment and be begging for the Rush Jets of old when you discover just how quickly you run out of juice and come crashing back down to the ground here in Mega Man 6. Still, this allows us to get to areas we couldn't normally access. Like with the power adapter, just don't try to slide or power your Mega Buster up while you're using this.
Yeah, I agree. Give me the consumable energy Rush Jet any day of the week. But you notice we took the top route here so we can Grab ourselves an E-Tank and a couple more recharging items right there, but if we had gone on the lower route, that's where it would have put us out. For what it's worth, I will give them this in the interest of just trying to keep it a little bit fresh. They did introduce more of the idea of non-linear paths through the levels, although it's not implemented all that effectively, I would argue. For the most part, it's just a very quick veer off in a different direction, but take the top route here, speaking of multiple routes, and switch to your jet, or your power adapter, I should say, and charge it up, and if you get right to the very edge, you don't have to make this dangerous. We're defying gravity here, and physics, but you can inch to the very edge of there, and then his sole appearance in this game, Proto Man giving us, please?
Alright, the energy balancer will automatically recharge Mega Man's lowest weapon energy level when you pick up a weapon capsule, so it's basically a glorified time saver.
Yeah, that's probably a good way of putting it. Honestly, it's just one of those features which probably should have been in the game from the first title. So you didn't have to keep bringing up that menu and swapping out. Would have saved us a lot of time, but that's fine. Sure, make it a pickup item midway through the final title on the NES. That works. So you'll note that we backtracked and took the bottom route this time. There are two different routes to get to the boss on this and the next 3 levels. And if you take the incorrect one, then you miss out on the chance to collect beat, which we'll talk about. But this is the correct route. Be very careful here with that Rush Jet Adaptor. Note that this platform flips, spikes up after you touch down on it, but tips on the next boss in Tomahawk Man. Let's go back to Gary.
Boss beater.
Tomahawk Man is once again about reacting while keeping him at a decent distance. He has 2 attacks, both of which can be jumped over if you're careful and precise. The Silver Tomahawk starts out slow and can be jumped over before it begins to arc up at range. The feathers can be slid under, but it's safer to just plan on jumping over everything rather than parsing which attack he's using and reacting accordingly. Tomahawk Man jumps to get around with sometimes long, sometimes shallow jumps. You can generally just run underneath him, which is preferable to staying on one side and getting trapped in a corner, as just like with Flame Man, this can get dangerous. As you run under him, this is the best time to use your plant barrier to catch him just as he lands, but you can successfully escape to the other side. You can also get in closer, jumping over the projectiles and attacking as you fade away to reset position, but note sometimes Tomahawk Man likes to wander toward you with shallow steps, so be ready for that. As Blaze mentioned, the plant barrier weapon which Tomahawk Man turns out to unaccountably be weak against only gives you 7 uses when it's full. As Tomahawk Man takes 7 hits with that weapon to defeat, you have to make every single shot count en route to taking him down.
Thank you, Gary. And his weapon, Blaze?
The Silver Tomahawk arcs low, then high as it quickly flies up the screen. It isn't quite as powerful as the Flame Blast, instead being on the level of the charged Mega Buster shot at 3 damage, but thankfully, it also only costs 1 weapon meter per shot. So it's not a bad backup to the Flame Blast when you do run low on that for an everyday getting around weapon. By the way, when Capcom said silver, did they mean bronze?
Very fair question. Thank you very much, Blaze. So at that first junction here on Yamato Man's level, where you had that cracked wall, make sure you go through it to grab yourself an E-Tank, not to mention ultimately what is an easier route in my opinion. You can go up the ladder before it to get yourself a 1-up, but otherwise, yeah, take the lower route, and there's our E-Tank. We'll have one more junction where we'll want to use the Jet Adaptor to take the top route to wind up at the actual Yamato Man, meaning the one which will give us the beat letter. The boss plays that exactly the same no matter which route you take, but yeah, that's the only one in this level's case which will earn you that next letter in beat. Whether that's worth it or not in the end, well, that will be determined, but just to let you know. So we're taking the top route here as mentioned. Obviously you need to have the Rush Jet Adaptor to one, get up here and then clear those spikes. Another reason why we recommend the order which we do, obviously, so you could grab that, whatever that item is called that tops off our, whatever weapon that we have the lowest energy on. Just, it's all by design, so it's a bit more cut and dry in this game versus some of the other Mega Man. Certainly the entries from the X series, which we always have more of a spirited debate on in terms of the best order for taking on the bosses. But speaking of which,
Boss beater.
Yamato Man is another boss you want to keep your distance with. This gives you time to react, jumping over a straight shot or jumping to find the gap in the case of his 3-projectile spread shot. When he fires the straight shot, he'll run to the other side of the room to recollect it, making it easy to jump over him in that case. If he gets close enough and jumps with his spread shot, just slide underneath him to the opposite side of the room and repeat the process. Get the hits in when you can with your silver tomahawk, minding the arc of the weapon, and take him down.
thank you, Gary. And aside from getting the next letter, what's the weapon we got, Blaze?
The Yamato Spear fires out fast projectiles which go straight across the screen, alternating between one higher and one slightly lower shot. They do 2 damage per hit, making this one of the weaker weapons in the game. The good news is it only costs a single meter per shot. Bad news is they go fast. Meh.
Meh indeed. Thank you very much, Blaze. Kind of gives me the Quickman Boomerang vibes right there with the coloring and also kind of the shape of those projectiles. But moving on to Man Stage, I appreciate how they give all of the levels their own fancy little names. Capital of Science here. One of the better pieces of music in this game, in my opinion. And speaking of Man, actually, let's bring in Fluff for our first Fluff fact about Mega Man 6. Topical one. Fluff, what do you got?
In previous classes we've held on earlier entries from the Mega Man series, I pointed out that Capcom once again held an open contest in Japan where fans of the series could submit character ideas to Capcom to be considered for the game. Mega Man 6 was the first title in the series which went international with its submissions, as Nintendo Power ran their own contest, accepting entries with Capcom actually ending up accepting 2 submissions from North America in Nightman and Windman, which helped give the game a more international feel for the developers. Supposedly these winners, and consequently the design of these characters, came in relatively late during the game's production cycle, which put a strain on the team's schedule. But I guess there were no hard feelings, as 2 of the 3 Robot Masters who appear on the cover of Mega Man 6 for the North American release are the 2 North American fan submissions.
Good call, thank you, Fluff. Yeah, it's, I don't know if you'd be able to tell which ones were the North American submissions just based on the names alone. I guess you could probably guess Yamato Man was not one of the ones coming from America. Nightman feels like maybe more of a European submission, but close enough, I suppose, right? In case you were curious, class, as I was, Yamato, the term itself, has a number of connotations in Japan. It's hard to nail down just one, but essentially it's just synonymous with Japan and the concept of Japan. So basically just be the equivalent of having a robot master called American Man or something, or Florida Man, I suppose. Silly as that sounds, admittedly not the best explanation, I'm realizing as I say it out loud. I'm no Fluff, but still, you can look it up and you'll see I wasn't too far off, essentially. But gotta have the Rush Jet Adaptor to get up there and grab that E-Tank, and we need the Rush Power Adapter to access the beat version of Nightman here at the end. It's a fun little stretch here, since there's no real danger with any spikes or anything, just a couple baddies on the roof or floor of that area. You can see the alternate non-beat route to the boss right there, the top right. And yeah, these are pretty much right next to each other. Come through here to take on the beat version, which is the same version of Nightman, but with getting that A. But tips on Nightman, here's Gary.
Boss beater.
Probably the easiest boss we've encountered so far. Nightman is especially easy if you've got the Yamato Spear, which, if you've been following along, you do. This is because the spear is not only Nightman's weakness, but it also penetrates his shield, which our Mega Buster does not. So we don't need to wait until he fires his mace at you to get shots in. Speaking of that mace, it travels quickly, pauses once it reaches its end, and quickly returns. In other words, jump over it, then be ready to jump over it again while you get 1 or 2 spears in on him. Once he gets too close to one side of the room, slide under him after he jumps to put some distance between you two as you pump him full of those Yamato Spears. 7 hits wins.
Thank you, Gary. And how about that weapon we just got, Blaze?
For defeating Nightman, you earned yourself the Night Crusher, although I think that might be Mega Man's new nickname after that pathetic display by Nightman just now. The Night Crusher is a mace which you fire out a little more than halfway to the end of the screen from you, and which boomerangs back to you. Like the Silver Tomahawk, this does 3 damage, or the equivalent of one of your charged Mega Buster shots. Unlike the Silver Tomahawk, you have 3 options on where you aim this, and straight ahead, where you can hold up or down with either left or right, making it effective for hitting enemies slightly above or below you. At only 1 weapon energy meter per shot, this is a good getting around weapon which isn't quite as powerful as the Flame Blast, but has a better shot at hitting more targets.
Thank you, Blaze. You can see how well the Night Crusher worked in the first part of this stage here on Centaur Man Stage. Just angling your shots accordingly. Yeah, when we were in that kind of waterfall area, the man-made waterfall right there, kind of reminded me of something from Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu. Thankfully the flames still work here underwater. In the kind of the dolphin punch minigame. Yes, the dolphin punch. Maybe not dolphin, but just maybe marlin, some giant fish. But note the kind of mind-bending physics of the water here. Once you are jumping within it, then you get that underwater gravity, so you can make jumps like... Wait till we get it to come right pretty much when it's peaking, or hitting its trough, I suppose, best said. I'm not sure what the proper term there would be, but for what it's worth. Again, we can punch those guys with our power adapter if you want to. Yeah, note that they're kind of stingy on weapon energy refills on this stage, so you want to leave about 1/3 of your bar for the boss on this Night Crusher. So I was ragging on him earlier, but that was kind of a good get from Eddie. It's very much appreciated. And just get rid of those clouds so these enemies can't float at you anymore. And the Night Crusher is good for doing just that. Just baiting out the enemies as they come out on this stage. And this will be the final letter in our beat kind of weapon, kind of item, whatever you want to call it. Blaze will talk about it once we get it, but... And the 2 boss doors are right next to each other. The fake me out one on the bottom, and then the real one, which we want to get the final letter in beat. We'll need the Rush Jet Adaptor for this, which we got a very long time ago. Just more proof that this is the definitive best boss order, or stage order here in Mega Man 6. Probably of the entire series, I would say, for the NES certainly. It's the most obvious in this game, but I digress. Gary, how about Centaur Man?
Boss beater.
Centaur Man is another one of the easier bosses in this game. We want to stay at the centaur of the screen. Sorry, class, couldn't help myself, but fire those Night Crusher mace projectiles at him, getting the timing right to keep hitting him as his temporary invincibility from the last shot wears off. Standing in the middle of the screen, you can avoid both his single shot as well as the follow-up cluster, which bounces off the wall and returns. After a shot, Centaur Man will charge, at which point just jump over him toward the opposite wall to clear him. If you're lucky and efficient, you can take him down before he even tries to warp, but if he does warp, apparently an ability of centaurs that I forgot about from my Greek mythology class, just walk a slide's distance off the center of the screen and slide back to the middle after a second to avoid him, and when he warps back in where you were standing, he'll likely freeze you, then fire his shot. But if you're in the middle of the screen, once again you'll avoid any damage before the freeze wears off. 7 hits from the Night Crusher mace takes him down. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Gary. Now it looks like we're on Man Stage. Windman's level has some dangerous fan and spike combos for what it's worth. It's important to note that if you jump over a spot with a fan, it will propel you up instantly, so sometimes you want to use this to your advantage, other times you just want to walk over the fans for a calmer propulsion to not get thrown into a ceiling of spikes, but yeah, just follow along. But we got ourselves a new weapon just now, Blaze.
When used by Mega Man, the Centaur Flash doesn't freeze anything on the screen like when Centaur Man used it. Maybe Mega Man should have also collected the manual, but what it does do is instantly hit everything on the screen for a powerful game-tying 4 damage. The downside is it's tied for the most expensive weapon, as you'd expect, costing 4 weapon energy meters per use. So save this for clearing out hard-to-reach enemies or instances where the screen is absolutely covered, which again, never seems to be a problem in this game. Maybe also just save it for the upcoming boss.
Fair enough, thank you very much, Blaze. And note, these things flip as soon as you touch down on them. I'm gonna have a very tricky instance of this a little bit later, as we'll show, but first things first, yeah, using the Rush Jet Adaptor is a little safer for that area there. Grab that loot up top, fly up there with the Jet Adaptor if you like. And we also got beat from defeating that last boss, getting that final piece, Blaze.
Alright, Beat is back, assuming you defeated the proper versions of each of those 4 robot masters to collect all 4 letters. When called in by equipping Beat and firing your weapon, this round mechanical bird will fly in and make a beeline for the nearest destroyable enemies to Mega Man and destroy them in a single hit, consuming as much HP as that enemy would normally take to defeat as weapon energy meters. Use it on an enemy who takes 4 regular shots from the Mega Buster. Beat consumes 4 meters of weapon energy, 5 shots, 5 meters, and so on. It's fine.
It is just fine. Probably will never use it in this run, but there you go. Thank you, Blaze. And if you want to refill anything, if you need to, you can pop up there. Just letting our item, which purpose is it for whatever our lowest weapon was. In that case, it was the Flame Blast. Only thing we'd used it on, but alright, coming up on the final of the Robot Masters, Windman. Gary?
Boss beater.
Windman is all about keeping your distance. This allows you to have plenty of time to slide under him should he hover charge at you, slide away from his propeller suction moves straight out of Airman's book, or jump over his fast-moving propeller shots, which combine in their movement pattern at a distance so you can clear them with a well-timed jump back toward the boss. Getting hits on Windman is easy considering his weakness is the Centaur Flash, which will guarantee a hit on him no matter where you are on the screen relative to him. The important thing is to make sure that Windman is no longer flashing from your last hit on him before you use it again, otherwise it won't take. And with only 7 shots possible from your fully stocked Centaur Flash weapon to deal the 7 hits necessary to take Windman down, you'll need every last one.
Thank you, Gary. And the final weapon in Windstorm, Blaze.
Windstorm is a very meh weapon, kind of like the Surge Snake in that it fires low, then sticks to the floor. It doesn't go up walls, but it goes faster than the Surge Snake, bouncing off the wall or target if it doesn't land for its very underwhelming 2 damage. It's only 1 meter per shot, but its lack of practicality for hitting targets and relative lack of damage means this one's gonna stay in your pocket until it's time to fight Flame Man again, or for the odd late game boss.
Good call, Blaze. Thank you very much. Excellent work today. And another one of the better pieces of music here in Mega Man 6, here in the first Mr. X Castle level. So we begin scaling, and they got some nasty platforming coming up for us here. Hope you have a good feel for using the Jet Adaptor at this point. You can see how I like to use it, just kind of staggering the propulsion to keep more or less an even level right there. But this is the most difficult part of the game. This is how we do this. Alright, not like that. But I will take that over hitting those spikes. You gotta make a very shallow jump, already having that power adapter charged up. Making that shallow jump. And just hold to the right as you let that go. A lot of mental gymnastics go into that, but probably the most difficult platforming part of the game. And the loot isn't worth that at all. There really should be a Yashichi waiting for us going this route, given the difficulty of getting here. The other route at those crossroads, if you went up, it's more straightforward. You just gotta take out some of the caterpillars, which we've come in contact with before with either the Silver Tomahawk or Centaur Flash, and just kind of rush jet your way across the ladders, avoiding spikes. But you get a couple 1-ups from going that way. But yeah, if you'd gone the longer top route, that's where it would deposit you from that top left area. They all lead to the same area, which is the next boss, Gary.
Boss beater. You can take out these bosses embarrassingly fast by stacking flame blast shots on this boss's weak spot, that is their sides, staying on the left side of the screen. You can also use the plant barrier, but the flame blast is much more cost effective. Each shot from the flame blast deals 2 damage, but with no temporary invincible grace period for them, you can stack 3 or 4 shots per pass to take each of these guys down in about 20 seconds, and only taking a couple hits yourself. Use an E-tank if you come into this one relatively low on health, but it's an easy win to move on.
Thank you, Gary. And move on we will to the second Mr. X castle. It is very nice not having to worry about switching weapons, by the way. As, yeah, now that we are into the Mr. X castle levels, or just after the basic Robot Master levels, as is the tradition here in Mega Man games, they no longer top you off your weapons between levels, so just be a bit more mindful about what you're using and making sure that you're topping things off when possible. Of course, if you have that item, which we picked up, then you're good. They give you a heads up about the pit here with an innocuous one. Just a little nod that maybe the spikes in a seemingly inaccessible area 10 feet from here aren't so inaccessible after all. But yeah, this level just feels like a perfect representation of the entire game to me. The enemies are kind of sparse, few and far between. The difficulty is unbalanced. Most of it's just dirt simple, even by Mega Man standards. Every now and then, like that tricky jump which we showed in that last stage, or that tricky little area, you get some elements like that which kind of throw it off. But yeah, a lot of the pits on this level have me thinking there's something worth checking out down there, because they're just so easy to avoid. It just feels like they didn't put a whole lot of thought into this one. And on that note, let's go to the next boss. Gary?
Boss beater. The Silver Tomahawk is the weapon we need here. I like to stand on that one tile with the wrench that looks different from the rest of the floor on the left, as this is the most reliable spot to get the arc of those tomahawks to hit on the boss. Jump through the bullet spray, or move off this spot to avoid the random boulder drops as necessary, but after 10 shots you'll take him down.
That is the spot. Thank you very much, Gary. And let's try to squeeze one in. Let's get another Fluff fact about Mega Man 6 from Fluff.
The professor mentioned how late in the NES's lifespan Mega Man 6 was released. The developers behind the Mega Man series and Capcom actually decided to not even publish Mega Man 6 in North America, as they turned their attention to the NES's well-established by that time successor and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and specifically the first entry in the spin-off series Mega Man X, which they were actually developing simultaneously with Mega Man 6. For what it's worth, Nintendo themselves ended up publishing Mega Man 6 for North American audiences, though they neglected to extend the same courtesy to European audiences, where Mega Man 6 wasn't officially released until 2013 as a re-release on the 3DS Virtual Console. Released under its Japanese name of Rockman 6 as the character is known there, the game carried the subtitle, "The Greatest Battle in History," with 2 exclamation points in Japan. Mega Man 6 was indeed the final entry in the popular Mega Man series, at least as far as the NES is concerned. Let's be real, and we reference this on the whiteboard in our class on, well, one of the previous 5 games, but they'll still be making Mega Man games after we're all dead and gone. Still, 6 relatively original titles in one series on one console, pretty impressive.
Certainly is, thank you, Fluff, and that's how I like to handle that with the Rush Jet Adaptor. Just minding the enemies which are flying about. Make this a little safer by using that power adapter. But yeah, it's difficult to not kind of compare it. We can grab ourselves some goodies by sticking to the bottom level here. But it's difficult to not compare it to Mega Man X in a way, given that, as Fluff mentioned, they were developed simultaneously with one another. Just felt like they had maybe turned all of their creativity and inspiration to that title and just, There's just so much more to that game. And maybe they thought, as they were building that game out, ooh, different routes and things like that. Can we kind of put some of this in the NES Mega Man 6? Yeah, I guess so. It's not going to be nearly as good, but something. But anyway, it's enjoyable. It's just, it's still Mega Man, so that's always going to be enjoyable, especially on the NES with this type of graphics and gameplay. In case it sounds like I'm not enjoying myself. Admittedly, I did have the least amount of experience with this game growing up compared to the rest of the series. But yeah, you can't put this game in the same category as a Mega Man 2. Something like that. Again, no disrespect to all the fans of Mega Man 6 who might put it ahead of Mega Man 2. Alright, well, maybe a little disrespect. Anyway, next boss, Gary.
Boss beaters.
Another embarrassingly easy boss in Metonger Z. Just stay on the left side of the screen and get those blizzard attack shots in. Because of their spread, you don't need to aim, you just need to make sure you're facing right, which, well, I'd hope you could do that at this point in the game, class. Aside from just rolling back and forth, this boss only has 2 attacks. The first are just straight shots which don't even go low enough to hit you. I guess that's a problem if you need to fall back on a different weapon, possibly because you were facing left during one of your shots. And the other attack is just 3 slowly bouncing shots, which can be easily avoided if you just walk between the gaps to avoid getting hit. 10 hits from the blizzard attack wins.
Alright, good call, Gary. And the final of the Mr. X castle levels here. Time to find out Fluff's gonna win or lose that bet. Not sure it was much of a bet, honestly. I don't think he's getting anything out of it if he's right, but aside from some satisfaction. But yeah, there's zero reason to make those jumps normally at this point in the game. Literally cannot get here without having the Jet Adaptor, so gonna make use of these, as well as the power adapter. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't just feels like maybe for the sake of doing something different, they went ahead and redesigned. We're gonna skip that E-tank, but if you want to go over there and grab it, you can knock these over and clog up these enemy producing chutes here. Something out of Dustman, but in reverse, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know why they messed with the rush formula at this point. Oof, that was close. Was that our first death by the backwards momentum there? Yeah, I don't know why you would take Rush out of the game entirely. I mean, they show him for a split second as the two merge, but I don't know. I need to stop at this point devoting all the commentary to just ragging on the game. At this junction, you can go up if you don't like pits. This route has a few more baddies and a 1-up, but yeah, no real appreciable difference. But this is the kind of the thing I'm talking about, just the weakest level design probably out of the entire NES series. On balance, I would say. And if you went up there, that's where it would deposit you. As all routes, by which I mean both routes, and in the same place. Obviously, if you push this, you can't get that E-tank, but we don't care. We will happily take the weapon refill, though. I will say this, Dr. X might not be Dr. Wily, but they definitely get their signage from the same store. I mean, look at that. It's a dead giveaway. That screams of Dr. Wily just trying to rebrand himself after a bunch of bad reviews. Getting dinged by the Better Business Bureau, but anyway, next boss, Gary.
Boss beaters.
It's Mr. X himself, class. Swinging back and forth in a giant tethered and spiked volleyball. Or is it just tetherball at that point? I don't know. But what I do know is that he's weak against the flame blast. So stick to the left and jump and fire as the boss swings towards you. don't do it so late that he hits you, as this deals a lot of damage. There's a very tight window where, after he begins to swing away from you, you can just get a jump off to avoid the energy shot ripping across the floor like the professor is showing, but at 4 damage per successful hit you land, 7 shots takes him down.
And there will be no compliments for Mario from Fluff, as yes, class, I'm going to shock you when I tell you that, yes indeed, Mr. X turned out to be Dr. Wily in disguise. I mean, it just looked like hippie version of Dr. Wily. He had kind of longer hair, just aged hippie Dr. Wily, but it was just a get-up, and once again, we are battling with Dr. Wily. Hopefully Mega Man has the sense to just shoot him in the face if and when we catch up to him here in the end. There is a dangerous area coming up to give this game some credit. Get your Rush Jet Adaptor out and begin to slow your descent once you get to the single platform screen, which is right after this one here. After the next screen, or even as you begin the drop between those spikes, immediately begin holding A to slow your descent and push to the right, just like that, to land on a platform which you can punch through. This little barrier here. Then take the right ladder to get yourself an E-tank, minding the invisible pit just to the right of it, so you're going to make a little bit of a jump. Then you can go down the pits to find 8 of the miniature health refills. Right there. And then just punch out to the left, and then put that jet adapter back on after you take this out. And then begin the jets as you start to drop to slow your descent, and then push to the right to grab 3 of those full-sized weapon energy refills. And that puts us in a much better position moving forward as we're ready to take on more of these bosses and the boss rush, which is coming up around the corner as usual. Let's get some tips on the next boss now, once again with Gary.
Boss beater.
Taking some damage is more or less guaranteed in this battle, given the speed of this boss's random fireballs, especially as you're riding the equally fast-moving platforms up. Thankfully, Mechazaurus, he's very weak against the Yamato Spear, with each hit dealing 4 damage, so just focus on landing hits on the eyes as you ride the elevators up and jump. You should deal enough damage to take Mechazaurus down before your health becomes an issue.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, this is where those slight alternating positions of each shot, one high, one low, that Blaze mentioned earlier, can be a little tricky for lining up those shots with the eyes, but just do your best. And moving on. E-tank there at the start. And there will be another E-tank coming up here in just a bit as we are in the freezer, Dr. Wily's freezer, apparently. Very satisfying gapping those 2 enemies there. And you can melt the wall in this room for a relatively safe shortcut, but you skip an E-tank, so I'll be taking the left route, but just to point that out. While you can clear this room as intended, I just assume wait until we see that brick, which is just up and right of that top left exit. So jet up there and then just push to the left and you'll drop down on that one which lines up with that gap, and then just slide through there, making sure that you're not still having the any of the adapters equipped, as again, as Blaze mentioned, you cannot slide when you have those engaged. But there's our E-tank that I mentioned. And that's where you would come out for that shortcut if you chose to melt the wall back there in that appearing brick room. That's a throwback right there. Don't get a lot of those in this game. That might be the only one unless I have already forgotten one. which I wouldn't put past for this game, but I have to say I'm curious when we finally get to our class on Mega Man 7, the sole entry on the SNES for this iteration of Mega Man, but I digress once again. Let's go back to Gary for tips on the next one.
Boss beater.
This boss is all about starting fast, so quickly run to the right and begin unloading shot after shot of your windstorm at the height of your jumps. You don't need to get too close. Make sure you can still avoid those retaliatory bullets. This boss will intermittently fire bubbles, which will get taken away by successful shots from your windstorm as well. The thing will keep moving to the left until it traps us against the wall, where it won't crush us, but those counter bullets will be practically unavoidable. You can push it back with normal shots to the wheels, but if you move fast enough, you should be able to get the 7 necessary shots off to defeat it before it becomes too much of an issue, and as always, use an E-tank should you need one.
Thank you very much, Gary. So mind the fans here, but there's the E-tank down there should you need it. I really don't think you'll need them. I'm realizing with the number of ones which I'm skipping because we don't need them, yeah, you probably don't need them, but still, I like to point them out. It's part of the run, but yeah, the Jet Adaptor, very nice. Thankfully works underwater there, but this is just sort of a glorified entryway to the boss rush here in Mega Man 6. But you know the drill, just using all of the weapons and strategies which Gary mentioned earlier, and the only exception should be when we get to Flame Man, you can use the Windstorm weapon on him, because we didn't have that the first go around, but same strategies otherwise. We get a health refill at the end of taking down each one of these, so you can play a little bit loose, or looser than you probably did the first go around, which I probably will end up doing myself. But anyway, as we work our way through these, let's get one last Fluff fact about Mega Man 6 from our resident fact finder, Fluff.
We've talked about this being the final Mega Man title on the NES, and Nintendo taking over publishing duties from the aforementioned disinterested developers in Capcom to bring the game to North America in 1994. Nintendo was keen on injecting a little extra life into some of their final titles released on the NES to help promote their officially yet terribly named New Style NES, colloquially also known as the NES2, obviously our favorite name in the NES 101, or just the top-loading/top-loader NES. The latter name being an obvious reference to the fact that NES games were loaded top-down, much like the NES's successor in the SNES, and its successor on top of that in the Nintendo 64. Retailing at just $49.95 upon its late 1993 release, this represented a deep discount compared to the original NES's initial release price of $180 in 1985. The NES 101 omitted a few features from the original NES, such as no expansion port, AV output, or lockout chip, the latter of which actually made the NES 101 more reliably play non-licensed NES titles. Japanese consumers got their own awfully titled HBC 101 console, but our North American, Australian, and New Zealand exclusive NES 101 console also featured an SNES and, dare I say, Dogbone inspired controller. And getting back to why it seems like I have completely veered off into a top-loading tangent, Nintendo used notable titles released late in the NES's lifespan, which featured recognizable characters or series like Zoda's Revenge, Star Tropics 2, Wario's Woods, and Mega Man 6 to help the hardware and software together as one last push for this admittedly dying generation of console and games. Anyone have one of those consoles, by the way?
Yeah, the 101. I do like that. Yeah, we meant to get one in my household. I mean, I don't think my parents cared, but my brother and I think always meant to get one just because we understood, or had the understanding or belief at least, that they loaded NES games a bit better. You didn't have to blow on them quite as much and reposition them, although I have to say I got pretty darn good as a kid, and I still retain that ability of just finding the perfect orientation of that cartridge inside that NES in the conventional front-loading model. And it's not just about, obviously, for those in the know, it's not just about pushing in the cartridge and turning it on. years later, you need to just, depending on the game itself, or maybe even your console at that point, need to kind of finagle them a little bit, just kind of little adjustments here and there. Sometimes pulling them out just a little bit to ensure that it can read the cartridge properly. But yeah, those who know know. But anyway, yeah, curious if anyone does have one of those, though. I think if I saw one today, I'd probably pull the trigger. Not sure where you would find one, maybe at a retro game store at this point. I know in the early 2000s it was more about hitting pawn shops in some cases, swinging in every couple months on the usual spots, but was that an endless mic sighting in that top-loading commercial, by the way? Anyway, we're moving on to the final level now, the breadstick portion of the castle. Over there on the right, I don't know if that's meant to be like a claw grabbing onto that little silo part, but yeah, those raised bits just make it look like giant breadstick. Now that I've made myself hungry, equip yourself with the Jet Adaptor and slow your descent as you get to the bottom of this screen, and then hug to the left and switch to the Silver Tomahawk, as this will be the weapon we'll get the most use of out of the, well, for the final couple boss battles here. Gary will talk about it. Actually, let's go to Gary now for tips on taking down the kind of penultimate boss here in Mega Man 6. Gary, what do we got?
Boss beater.
As the professor just mentioned, the Silver Tomahawk is the weapon of choice from here on out, beginning with Wily Machine 6, which we need to defeat twice. Just slide in the opposite direction as the boss is moving when they jump to get underneath, then jump over the projectile. It's not difficult to hit such a large target, so get shots in where you can and make sure they land. It doesn't matter where they land so long as it hits the boss. Every landed shot deals 4 damage, so 7 hits takes down this initial form. In the second phase, Wily appears and the conveyor belt switches directions every time Wily jumps. Just repeat the strategy and bear in mind Wily only fires the one projectile in the second phase each time. If you happen to run out of the Silver Tomahawk, you can fall back on the Night Crusher or charged Mega Buster shots in a pinch.
Good call, Gary. Thank you very much. Now, final form. Gary, take us home.
Boss beater.
Like with the Wily Machine, Silver Tomahawk does 4 damage to the latest version of the Wily Capsule. It's a smaller target this time, and he'll keep warping in and out while getting his rotating then homing shots off on you. So prioritize dodging those, and only take a shot when you know Wily is sticking around long enough to hit him. Also, take into account the arc of the Tomahawk, but once again 7 hits takes him down with this weapon. But again, if you run out, the Night Crusher is a decent backup, because while it does half the damage as the Silver Tomahawk, you can obviously angle this one to guarantee hits with greater success without having to reposition too much, regardless of where Wily is on the screen. Otherwise, you can always fall back on the charged Mega Buster shots, but however you do it, take him down, and congratulations, you have beaten the final entry in the storied series on the NES in Mega Man 6.
Thank you very much, Gary. I heard it too, by the way. But excellent work today, Gary. All my TAs, just shoot him in the face, Mega Man. Rules over a prison cell. You know it's only a matter of time. But I think I mentioned this in the past. If it weren't for Wily, wouldn't have all of the merchandising, wouldn't have any more games, so I get it. From that cynical perspective, I get it, but still, just shoot him in the face. But there you go, as we enjoy the credits here. Thank you everyone so much for attending this class. I want to mention, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to Enroll in Video Games 101. We do one of these classes every single week in the same spot. We'd love to have you enrolled. Click that like button too if you don't mind, really does help us out to make future classes for you. And leave a comment, where do you rank this on the NES Mega Man series rank order? I mean, you can give me the entire ranking if you like. Best to worst, worst to best, however you want to do it. But yeah, this one had its moments. I think the best music was there in the end, actually, when we were facing Dr. Wily there at the end. And now we just watched the sad, just out of context, just seems super sad watching these robot masters just bouncing around with no one to attack. That's their sole existence. And even with these reps, really didn't show up on game day. You especially, Nightman. I have to say. Don't think you needed that much camera time, but there you go. There you go. Daniel Valley. Just decidedly less Japanese name right there, as we'll see on Windman as well. But yeah, we'll let these credits play out the rest of the way, but that's our time. We'll see you next week in the same spot for next week's class right here on Video Games 101. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video, and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.